Josh Hawley, as the Republicans are flailing around to criticize Kentanji Brown Jackson, who is going through the confirmation, I think, hearing right now.
Yep.
Josh Hawley entered in with, I've been researching the record of Judge Kentanji Brown Jackson and reading her opinions, articles, and interviews and speeches. I've noticed an alarming pattern when it comes to Judge Jackson's treatment of sex offenders, especially those preying on children. And there's a series of these tweets, right? Yeah. Okay. We'll read a couple more. I know it's a long thread, but she has Judge Jackson has a pattern of letting child porn offenders off the hook for appalling crimes. Both as a judge and a policymaker, she's been advocating for it since law school. This goes beyond soft on crime. I'm concerned this is a record that endangers our children. And this
is so
is
hard to figure out what he's trying to do here.
Right. I mean, this is all Q stuff. Now, Ian Millhiser had a great, point by point takedown of this, and I will spare all of you it. But
like one of the instances that he's referring to, I mean, was when she was on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and she supported basically getting rid of mandatory minimums for first-time offenders who either receive or distribute child pornography, which was, I think, the same thing. So, I mean, even the National Review came out and said that this criticism was ridiculous. Not saying that we should.
Well, that's because
they're trying to. They know it's ridiculous, and they're trying to, CYA. But.
It was a split decision. A unanimous decision by a committee that has both Republicans and Democrats. And one of the Republicans on there was a judge appointed by Trump. I mean, so the idea that it was just her decision as opposed to all of these judges making it. But there are other things where he really takes stuff out of context. So he says stuff like in one tweet, he says, quote, Judge Jackson has said that some people who possess child porn are either in this for the collection or the people who are loners and find status in their participation in the community. What community would that be? The community of child exploiters? And Ian Millhiser writes, in reality, Jackson was just asking a follow-up question to a witness who had spoken of an online community. Quote, she said, quote, I was just going to say as a follow-up to that, Miss McCarthy, is it your experience that this category of non-sexually motivated child pornography offenders is very small? Because you had them broken out on your slide, the non-sexually motivated, and that I just found so interesting because I assumed that everyone who was involved in this kind of activity was sexually motivated. So the people who are in this for either the collection or the people who are loners and find status in their participation in the community, but would be categorized as non-sexually motivated, how many are we talking about? So all she was doing was literally reading back part of the presentation that she was being given by someone coming in to argue that there are different gradations or categories of people who have this material. And she was not articulating this idea herself. She was repeating it back to the person who was presenting it. It was presumably some type of expert in this stuff. In another tweet, Hawley asserted Judge Jackson has opined that there may be a type of less serious child pornography offender whose motivation is not sexual, but is, and then you can see in his tweet, the quotes come in at different points. So he whose motivation is not sexual, but is Hawley writing. Quote, is the challenge or to use the technology, end quote. A, quote, less serious, end quote, child porn offender. And then again, Millhiser writes, here she was asking a question in response to testimony that she found surprising. Quote, I was surprised at some testimony with respect to the motivations of offenders and that there are people who get involved with this kind of activity who may not be pedophiles, who may not be necessarily interested really in the child pornography, but have other motivations with respect to the use of technology and being in the group. And, there are lots of reasons perhaps why people might engage in this. And
a lot of this was just an effort to update some of the sentencing given the era of technology as well.
Well, yes, but that's not what she's asking here. She's just saying I'm surprised that you're telling us that there are people who enter into these chat rooms because they're more interested in finding out the technology about the chat technology than they are, or the, encrypted technology or the anonymous technology. And then she says, and so I'm wondering whether you could say that there could be a less serious child pornography offender who is engaging in the type of conduct in the group experience level because their motivation is the challenge or to use the technology. So she's being presented with the idea that there are green lions, and she's saying, I'm surprised to hear. And then this is where Hawley takes the quote, there are green lions.
Yes.
And then she says, well, based upon the existence of green lions, are you suggesting that there are lions who are a different color than tan? And Hawley said, drops the "are you suggesting" part and says, there are lions who are less, different colors than tan. And that's basically what's going on here. It is, now I guess if you want to argue like this is the type of judge who's going to listen to experts to find some type of nuance in our criminal justice system, that would be, I think, like a valid.
Yeah. It would be less disingenuous than whatever he's engaging in.
A more honest attack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Josh Hawley, Ivy League educated, I can't remember which one, but he knows where to start a quote and where to end it. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Exactly what he's doing. It's unbelievable. Let's play his clip from the hearing today.
States versus Hawkins. This was a child pornography case where the defendant distributed multiple images of child porn, possessed dozens more, including videos. The federal sentencing guidelines recommended a sentence of 97 to 121 months in prison. Prosecutors recommended 24 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave the defendant 3 months in prison. United States versus Chazen. That case, the defendant possessed 48 files of child pornography. The federal guidelines recommended 78 to 97 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended the same. Judge Jackson sentenced him to 28 months. United States versus Cooper. There, the defendant possessed dozens of images of child pornography and distributed dozens of images of child pornography, possessed over 600. The federal guidelines recommended 151 to 188 months in prison. That's a long time. The prosecutor recommended 72 months. Judge Jackson gave the defendant 60 months, which was the lowest sentence permitted by the law.
Just 5 years.
United States versus Down. That's a case where the defendant distributed 33 graphic images and videos of child sexual assault to an anonymous messaging app. Unfortunately, a practice that's becoming more common. The federal guidelines.
I just want to highlight the fact that his third example of her egregious sentencing is she said 5 years instead of 6 years, what the prosecutor wanted. That's the egregiousness here.
That's that 6-year itch you got to.
By the time you if you're really trying to build a case here, as Hawley is, by the time you get your third example, the idea is that like she gave a sentence that was 12% less than what the prosecutors wanted. So
none of that matters. It's all just like he's not going to say. We're seeing this clip because it just aired, right? Cold. But I doubt he's going to bring up the Pizzagate shooter sentencing, which she sentenced the Pizzagate shooter, but it's all implied. Like this is what he's trying to drum up
her
here.
Agenda.
She's in bed with pedophiles, and the Pizzagate shooter was figuring it out, right? He was getting a little bit too close to the case. And so she was the one deployed by the Democratic pedophiles to keep this under wraps, sentence the guy. And also this is in keeping with her pattern of not throwing the book at all pedophiles and sex offenders. That's like what he's trying to do.
Right. She's the one who sentenced the child sex offender hero.
And you think that's what, like, they know that, like we said, they might probably keep their powder dry and not go at her as hard as we think. But
McConnell wants to keep his powder dry.
Okay.
Yeah. This dude wants to run for president or VP.
Right. Well, I'm saying like they need something to throw to their like freaks, and it's going to be this QAnon stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
It's
Continue.
okay.
Let's hear them more.
Recommended 70 to 87 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 70 months in prison. Judge Jackson sentenced him to only 60 months. Again, that's the lowest level that was permitted by law in that case. United States versus Stewart. The defendant there distributed scores of images of children suffering sexual abuse. The guidelines recommended 97 to 121 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 97 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave him 57 months. In United States versus Sears, the defendant distributed over 100 videos of child pornography. The guidelines recommended 97 to 121 months in prison. The prosecutor recommended 97 months in prison. Judge Jackson gave him 71 months.
Pause it for 1 second. I wonder what the defense attorney wanted to give him. Right? Like, I mean, the idea that prosecutors get exactly what they want in terms of sentencing every time is absurd. But this is what Josh Hawley's doing. And, good luck to that.
No, it fits well with his war to save masculinity, right? That he's engaging with on his podcast with his wife.
He's a good dad. He's looking out for the kids.
Yeah.
Looking out for the kids.
Soon he'll be talking about how having a woman in bed with pedophiles on the court is contributing to the feminization of America, obviously.
Obviously.
It all fits together.